Hello, everybody. This is Steve Holmes of Boosted Reality. We're here on our live stream to talk about Riftstone Contact and closeout of our Kickstarter campaign. I have with me Jeremy Bennett, my co-founder, Rob Perez, who is our audio wizard, and Keely, who is our lead artist on the project. We're very much looking for questions and giving us a chance to talk a little bit about what we were thinking as we've developed the game and some of the ideas we have for the future. Definitely want this to be a conversation as much as possible, but we're quite capable of entertaining ourselves if you don't have any, and hopefully that'll entertain you too. Anything you guys want to start with here, Jeremy?
You know, I'd say
hold tight, guys.
Hold tight.
Hey everyone, welcome. Gosh, it's been a while since we've done a Rem Alternus Productions live stream. I'm here today though with some very special guests. As many of you know, we do Kickstarter management at Rem Alternus Productions and marketing, and we've been lucky enough to work with my friends over at Boosted Reality Games. How are you guys doing?
Great. Very good. Yeah, thanks, Rem.
I'd love to do a little intro.
Hey, Rob, that's the wrong stream. Yeah, Rob, stop that.
Yeah, I'm turning it off.
I've been captivated by board games and role-playing games since I was a kid. Some of friends from junior high I used to play D&D with and go to board game nights with.
Yeah, it's the link I sent was the wrong link. Sorry, guys. My bad.
You can tell that technology is a strong point here.
Absolutely.
We do this all the time.
You guys are on the dev side, yeah?
Okay, I now have the proper link. Thanks for your help,
The link I sent was the wrong link. Sorry, guys. My bad. Yeah, that was.
There you go.
My bad. I saw a YouTube link. I said, "This is it."
The good news is now we have it all under control. So
it only gets better from here.
It only gets better here. Yes. Yep. We're gonna do what we wanted to do. Rounds. That's the thing. So row your boat.
Count me down with the sweat.
We just do it with our own Kickstarter live stream. So anyway, where were we?
Precisely what you said.
Sorry about that, guys. I apologize.
It's okay. Our sound expert, Rob Perez, everybody.
Thank you.
Jeremy, I think I started by asking you a question, which was, how do you want to start? Should we start by introductions? Why don't we do that? It's not everybody here can do that, or everybody on the stream will know us.
Let's start with introductions, but I'll challenge you all to also name your favorite game, video game or board game, as part of your introduction.
Right.
And I guess I got elected to go first. So,
exactly.
Yeah, for those of you that don't know, I'm Jeremy Bennett, the CTO here at Boosted Reality, and one of the primary developers on our mobile app, which makes playing the overall board game easier. And, you know, I'd say that my favorite game right now is Riftstone Contact, and I would be 100% honest. But I know people are going to want to hear what other games I love to be able to compare it. So I'd say one of my other favorite board games right now is Root, because it is truly an asymmetric strategy game where, depending on the faction that you pick, you've got a completely different strategy, and you've got different strengths, and you've got different weaknesses, which is really one of the things that we tried to build into Riftstone Contact as well, is that whole concept of an asymmetric battle, and being able to say, sure, I've got this super powerful unit, but it's only going to work under these conditions, and another opponent may be able to come in and undercut that. So that's me. Rob, why don't you go next?
Okay, Rob Perez. I do the music and the sound design, and totally hose the beginning of live streams in my spare time. So my favorite video game is probably Supreme Commander Forged Alliance. Steve and I have been known to spend way too many hours playing that. against a computer. But to Jeremy's point, I do think one of the things that I love about that game is the the sort of rock paper scissors ness of it. Just the way that certain units are going to cancel each other units out, other units out, and it's just epic, and the music is great, and no game ever plays out the same, and it's just an amazing game. It's based on, for those of you who don't know, it's based on a much older game called Total Annihilation, which was a real-time strategy game that was sort of miles ahead of its time when people were playing Warcraft and Starcraft. We were playing a real-time strategy.
No fighting words on the live stream, Rob.
I'll be providing my personal phone number at the end of the stream.
Exactly. Please text Rob at.
But anyway, that's definitely my favorite, I think.
Keely?
Yeah. As far as game design goes, I think one of my favorite games is probably Magic the Gathering. I think it's really interesting, especially when it comes to early Magic. It's less clear in the balancing now because they have such a deep pool of cards. They kind of just turn things out and see what happens. But when you look at older Magic, and I think this is something that applies really well to Redstone Contact, you see a lot of clarity in how they assign value to a card. What makes it good? Why is it good? How many points, in terms of building a unit and building something that has a certain mana value. Why is that cost so much? And there's a lot of clarity there. And there's a lot of clarity in having a card game that doesn't feel like a rock, paper, scissors game and is good at mitigating issues with going first, because that is like such a big problem in a lot of card games, and the simpler the card game, the more of a problem it is. I feel like it does all those things extremely well, and alongside that, I think the aesthetic to the game is something that I've always really gravitated toward. Just a classic high fantasy, sci-fi, good stuff.
Spoken like a true artist.
Oh yeah.
And did you want to say a little bit about yourself, Keely?
Yeah. So my name is Keely White. I'm the lead artist here at Boosted Reality. Been doing this for a couple of years now, and really enjoy designing a lot of the creatures and characters that come out of this game, and sort of building up the world and imagining how each piece interacts in these different scenes as we build up these different maps. Outside of Boosted work, I do a lot of painting dragons. I was living in New York for a couple of years, did a lot of plein air painting there, a lot of fantasy work, and in my free time, that is what things tend to lean toward. It's creating characters and concepts and fantasy creatures. And it's really gratifying to be able to integrate that into a game like this.
Fantastic. And I'm Steve Holmes, one of the founders of Boosted Reality, and I've been working with Jeremy and Rob and Keely on this project for a long time, trying to sort of bring at least the first version of it to life for our Kickstarter, with plans for many improvements and enhancements in the future. And I think probably one of my favorite games right now is Cthulhu Wars. It's actually one of the things that really got me excited about sort of the impact of a large game piece on the game board. And bringing out your great old one in Cthulhu Wars definitely gets everyone's attention, and it feels satisfying to move it in to challenge your opponent. And it's one of the things that we've tried to capture in Riftstone Contact, is the idea that these miniatures are they're something that we want people to really appreciate and to interact with as a physical element in this augmented reality world that we're creating. Rob, you were going to say something.
Yeah, I forgot. Well, I mean, I'm happy to go into my background since you guys are
yeah,
that way.
Please.
So Steve and I have actually known each other since 5th grade, which is for those of you doing math at home is 10,000 years. But I've been into music since even well before I met Steve. When I was seriously like 3 or 4 years old, my family gifted me our old turntable which was one of those ones you'd carry around in a box. And so literally, I would travel around wherever I went with this, wherever I was going. If I was going to friends, if I was going wherever I went, not school maybe, but I always had my record player in one hand and a bag of LPs in the other. And the LPs were ranged from like the Chipmunks to Mahler and Sousa to like the Beach Boys and Jan and Dean. You guys can look these up at home. But anyway, but even like from a very, very young age, I was always inflicting music on my friends, and I had a captive audience. These other 3 and 4 year olds were just like stuck with me, and not a lot has changed since then. But I've continued to be into music. I went to my first rock concert when I was like 7 years old, and it was like Cheap Trick, AC/DC, Blue Oyster Cult, Journey, and Ted Nugent, the latter of whom has not aged well, shall we say. But when I was in, I think, 9th grade, I started singing in my first rock band, and mostly because I was the guy who was like not too scared to pick up the mic and give it a try. And also I was doing things like playing in band, and I played trumpet, and I played clarinet, and I played French horn, and all this stuff. And later, started singing and playing guitar, and then probably about a little over 10 years ago, I guess, I started getting interested in home recording and making my own music, because I'm a big TT RPG fan as well, and I like to run horror games, especially on Halloween. There's kind of a tradition, and when I run a horror game, I always like to have a horror soundtrack to go with it. Well, a while back, I decided to start making my own, and that's what I've kind of been doing ever since. And anyway, I love it. It's super cool. It's really almost meditative for me to just get in and start creating something from nothing. I'm sure all you creatives out there know what I'm talking about. And I just love it. And so it was really kind of a cool thing for me to be able to contribute to this project, sort of as a hey, let's give it a try. Let's make a lemonade stand or whatever at first, and then we got very serious about it, and it turned out we really had something. And and Steve's a genius, and he's been pushing really, really hard. And and we've got great people on board. Jeremy's been working like crazy. We've got other people kind of in the background. Keely, came on and started doing the art, and it's turned into something, I think, that tooting our horn and all that stuff aside, and trying to pitch you. I think it's really cool, and I hope you guys really like it. I hope we fund and we go for a while, because I'm having a blast doing it. And how's that for something?
That's fantastic.
76%.
Really proud of
76%, lads.
Fantastic. I'm really proud of what we've built. And Rob, is it true that all the music was inspired by the Chipmunks? Is that right?
Just your favorites.
So yeah, Rob has done not just the game music and the music for the different factions, but also the sound effects for the various actions that can happen in the game, which has been really fun. And it's been a really collaborative process on the audio side, on the artwork side. I think it's been a really a great team that builds on each other's ideas. So that's
the collaboration has been mostly fun. I'm like, I like this
just
one.
Because you didn't like my pew pew sound effect. I don't know.
Right. Well, but it's great. Honestly, like, as uncomfortable as it is to have someone come back at what you think is a great thing and say, well, let's try this, and what comes out is better. I mean, like, across the board, these guys can be a real pain in my side, but it's been a real positive thing, and I'm really happy with the stuff that we're doing.
You've done a great job.
You have too, Jeremy. You're the best.
Thanks.
Yeah. Oh my gosh! Settle down, you guys. Settle down.
Your check's in the mail, man.
And Jeremy, I think if I remember correctly, our last playtest at KuboCon went very well, but there was a couple features people were really interested in, and suggested strongly that we pursued during that convention. And I think you've got prototypes coming together for all those suggestions and requests.
Yeah, no, that's honestly, that's one of my favorite things about now and in the future for Riftstone Contact, is because we've got the app which can contain the rules, but can also provide all those little extra hints on what's possible, as well as what are ranges, etc. And so, yeah, we get feedback. We start working on the feedback. There was a really good suggestion that we got at KublaCon, where somebody said, I'd like to know if this unit is in range or not. And of course, our answer at the time was, well, you can see that there's a little orange fence running around your unit and it shows you what the range is. And they said, sure, but can't you just pop up an indicator to say this unit is in range, that unit's not in range? So I built it yesterday.
Awesome.
It's looking good. And that's honestly, that's one of the things that I love. And I think, no matter what, I have a feeling I'm going to keep working on this app, and we're going to keep working on making the game move ahead, just because it's so much fun. And it's so cool for somebody to say, well, it would be great if I could see this information. Like, there it is. It would be great if I could have a defense mechanism against these things, and then we can just add it and roll it out.
Yeah.
All those little things that you're like, oh, I just discovered the magic strategy, and now I'm always going to win this board game.
Right.
We can fix it.
Yep. So we have a question from the audience here. Tyler acknowledges that we all like each other, so that's good. But we'd like to know some of the largest struggles working together. And Rob, I think we already know your opinion, so that's fine. But
let me go get my basket of dirty laundry.
Oh yeah, exactly.
Well, geography has been part of it for me, for sure, right?
Yeah, I think for a lot of us, Keely was in New York, you were in Austin, Jonathan's in Hawaii. Being a distributed team is definitely a challenge. Luckily, the pandemic got us trained up a little bit better on how to make that work.
Right.
But I think for the longest time, Rob, you didn't even have a chance to play the game. You were sort of experiencing it secondhand, right. And then just taking our word for it that we were awesome.
Right. Well, it's true. I mean, I saw a very, very early build, and I could see, where we were going. But mostly, communicated in pictures, and I saw some videos and stuff. But I think honestly, a big difficulty, like beyond geography, right, is that we are trying to do something completely new. And so, in many ways we're feeling our way, and we're relying on each other to give us good feedback, and just doing our best and finding out, finding better ways to do things, such as, hey, put an indicator on this. Like, oh, of course.
You guys want to see the biggest problem? I'm going to show you the biggest problem. Here, it's the biggest problem. Nova, the destroyer. Right. The destroyer of minis.
Right. Yeah, yes. Yeah, that is a heavy tax on our prototypes for sure.
Oh, here too.
Oh my goodness! All right, you guys. As long as we're showing off our pets.
Right.
Oh my gosh, not on me right now.
This is Johnny Rambo.
I will say that one of the things that makes me laugh is Jeremy's passive-aggressive motivation techniques, which are when he doesn't have the piece of content that he needs from Keely or from Rob, or an answer from me on something, he fills in with something that is so outrageously bad and embarrassing that that we have to respond and get our acts together. And of course, the most embarrassing thing is when you're at a playtest at a convention, Jeremy, and the playtesters ask, "What the hell is this panda shooting across the screen when I'm attacking with my Gatling gun?" So
why does the smart gun say pew pew?
That's right. Why is the smart gun saying pew pew? Or I forget. I can't remember if it was safe for work. What the mobile command unit did when it repaired things, but I'm pretty sure it was.
It's well, we should just leave that part out.
Yeah.
Oh, the UEDF mobile command unit was absolutely safe for work, because that was just me saying, I'm just a mechanic. I'm not here to fix your mental problems.
Perfect. Yeah. So anyway, so thank you, Rob and Keely in particular, for trying to accelerate so that I don't have to put up with this crap.
Yeah, there's something more to do,
Yep. Let's see. What else should we share with the with our audience here? We've got we've got a couple sort of new features that are about to be introduced. I think you're working on Area of Effect. Is that on the docket here for the near future, Jeremy?
Yeah, we're going to have Area of Effect fully implemented in probably a day or two.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Spray weapons as well. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Yeah. So I think that's one of the fun things is that this is a not a static game when we send it to our customers, right? It's going to be a living game where we can take suggestions and feedback and incorporate them into the game live and keep enhancing and building on it in a really dynamic way that you don't have to wait for errata. You don't have to buy the expansion. The game will just keep getting better and better and easier to play and easier to introduce to people and deeper as we go. And we're counting on people who are playing it to give us feedback so that we can make it better. And you'll have an easy, accessible way to do that with the mobile application. So it's we're excited about it, clearly. Let's see, what are some other good questions? Rob, I was giving you a hard time about the music, but I was actually, I love the music for the UEDF and the music for the Scryox. Maybe talk a little bit about inspiration for those two, and then I'm going to put Keely on the spot in a second here.
Yeah. So, I know some theory, and things like that. But I do a little writing and I make a little music. And a lot of the way that I feel like compose is a strong word, but I mean, maybe the way that I compose music, I really just sort of try and take the vibe, the sort of what each the history and the lore of each faction sort of represents to me, right? And and also Steve and I used to talk about this a little bit too, and again, we're both big Total Annihilation fans. We're both big Supreme Commander fans, and a lot of the music that I like to make, all like against all odds. I've always been a bit of a metalhead. Growing up, I've always been into like really kind of crazy stuff. But when I make music, it tends to be more symphonic somehow. So for the UEDF, I sort of tried to be a little bit more traditional, like Earth traditional. Like, okay, well, what is a march? Like it'd be like almost a war march, right? Like right, like something epic, like the Emperor's theme or whatever, And then and then so that was sort of the way I went. Just something really bombastic and brassy so anyway, so that's kind of what I was working with, like a lot of horns, a lot of heavy drums, a lot of like even some epic like epic choirs and all the stuff that we've all come to sort of expect from an overbearing militaristic force who may or may not be the good guy. I mean, I think something to remember in the game that I've always tried to hold on to is like, this is not glorious. This is like, war is a very bad thing, and these are two species that are trying to, like, they're just trying to live, and the other one is standing in their way, and so I try to like have a little kind of almost melancholy in there too. I don't know how well it shows through on the UEDF, the Earthlings side, but certainly the Scryox, it sounds, the Scryox I felt like should be kind of a really sort of an alien sound, obviously, because they are, but in more the way that they communicate is sort of as a collective, right? And I mean, and it sounds trite to say hive mind and all that stuff, but we really do have a collective and that is has a deep history and a different way of even relating to one another. But I wanted to make them sound somehow more ethereal, right? Because when the Skryox communicate, it's probably not, usually like here I am speaking to you all, right? There's probably a lot of sort of the history and the collective, voices even from like ancestrally, coming in. And so I wanted to make them sound a lot more ethereal, with a lot of more, there's a lot heavy kind of reverb and some some musical ideas that start out kind of dissonant, but then resolve into something quite beautiful.
I mean, I really love that it almost has sort of elements of whale song to the Skryox.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, exactly.
Which I think is, both sort of a little unearthly, but sort of has this very plaintive feel to it. So it's neat and a great contrast. And of course, in the game itself, right, your faction's music comes on when it's your turn to act. So the interplay of the two pieces of music and then some of the other effects and musical pieces really, I think, underscore some of the action in the game, which I also really like.
Right, and of course, because there are going to be times when the music is all playing together. A lot of the stuff I kind of did in the same key or some modulation thereof. So if you heard two things playing at the same time, it wasn't just, a complete like catastrophe, right?
Yeah, I love listening to the UEDF victory music at the same time that Steve is listening to the Skryox defeat.
Yeah, and
very funny.
Those go together well.
Right, and this is all the first pass stuff, right? Like I think we can always iterate on stuff and always make it better. Some of the even the sound effects are pretty early, or kind of early forays into it. And so I mean, in many ways, really, like even the stuff that you're seeing, in the Kickstarter, even some of the very cool graphics and artwork, like and gameplay elements, this is all super duper pre-alpha. I mean, don't forget that. Like this is just a few guys working on this, and and we're right, and we're planning on engaging like a lot more sort of heavyweight development around this thing, and it might not always be us, but it's again, it's all just new stuff, and and it's only going to get better. I'm really excited to. I mean, I see like old screenshots of like where we came from and where we are now, and in fact, even in very recent history, where we were not that long ago, and how much cooler it is now. And we still have refinements to make around UI and stuff like that. But I mean, it's going to be super cool, and I'm excited to keep going, and I hope we can for a really long time.
It's definitely come a long way, and I'm very much looking forward to shipping Rift Zone Contact and then moving right on to the next chapter and showing everybody what's coming through the Rift next, and what happens when some of the other human factions, because Earth is not the only planet in our solar system that is currently habited in the Rift Zone universe. So it'll be lots of fun to show everybody what's next, and to get to the point where we're going to have not just 2-sided, but 3-sided, 4-sided, 5-sided battles all taking place on the battlefield and around the world.
I'm very excited for a lot of the visuals that are going to come out of that, as we look at how does the planet itself interact with these sort of invaders. How do things on this other side of the rift come through? Right. Where are they coming through? Why is the planet attached to these rifts? Why, all these different lines of conceptual work that are sort of floating, and there's so many sketches backlogged, like waiting to be turned into something. And a lot of these are going to make really interesting 3D pieces as well, as the game has these different dynamics that change from player versus player to player versus enemy. So it's very interesting. It's very exciting.
Great segue,
are we anywhere near teasing like what might be coming through the rift, and or are we going to leave it at that for now?
That's why I kept it ambiguous.
If people want to know what's coming through the rift next, back the project. And you'll see the next chapter.
We did not plan that.
No, it's true.
But great segue, Keely, because I always love hearing you talk about your creative process and how you decide, like the Scryox colony base behind you is so both like plant-like and chitness at the same time. Where did that come from?
So, I guess it started off with the original concept work that preceded me, and I kind of asked, how do we build on that? Like, how are I guess with this space specifically, how are the Scryox going about gathering resources in this new space? What does that look like? If we take, like first thoughts, probably like, okay, like I think this came from Steven, it's like Scryox mines. What do the mines look like? How do they transport things? What's boring the tunnels? And then we have these, classic creatures like maulers, which are sort of this world's like purple worm in a way, but it's also a sentient unit.
Kill.
And so you have all of these. There we go. And as part of the background, you'll see a lot of different worms cutting through the landscape itself as they mine these tunnels and create something that feels sort of like this termite nest as they cut deeper and deeper into the planet itself. And I think that also opens up some interesting segues into, we have this ley line of runes sitting on the planet. It's sort of engulfed by a lot of the fungal life that exists there. And also, as not only the Scryox, but also the UAD, you have to dig deeper in. What's below the surface? What's everything connected to,
Yeah, we've said almost nothing about the ancient ruins and what these tiles mean.
Yes.
It's a terrain tile. It's beautiful Keely art, but every terrain tile has an impact on the game, and we've said nothing about these yet.
I'm very excited to see how we get to integrate a lot of these effects that we've thought about. And you and I have talked about, reasonably extensively. But without divulging too much information, it's it's a really interesting sort of PvP to PvE dynamic mid-game that adds a lot of interesting randomness and flavor. And especially now that you're getting into different attack or coding into like attacks, things like AoE damage, I think it becomes really exciting to see the potential of what do sort of boss creatures look like. What's the benefit?
Yes, I think it's been really interesting. So we've focused a lot over the first couple of years of development here on the skirmish games, which was really how do you get each battle to be a dynamic and fun thing to engage in. And I've joked before that probably we got carried away because Jeremy and I, we always end up spending way more time playtesting than we do talking about important business decisions. But still, I think we've done a good job creating a fun, quick board game that sort of captures the battle between two opposing forces. But the campaign stuff is what I think is what I'm really excited about next, which is there's also a whole story to tell and a whole background behind the initial engagement between the Scryox and the human forces, and then sort of how that unfolds on the planet and how their interactions create some bigger problems in the universe. So I think that piece of it is something that we've teased a fair amount, but it's obviously I think one of the things that's going to make the game really stand out is that there will be chapters of the campaign, and this first chapter, Riftstone Contact, is about the real meeting and intersection of these two opposing forces. But then there's more chapters to come that tell a lot more about the universe, about the other things that inhabit it. Tells more about the politics back in Seoul and the politics on the Scryox homeworld. There's a lot behind it. I think the hardest part has been figuring out how fast to roll it all out and to share it.
Right, yeah, and also creating battlefield scenarios based on the lore, a little give and take between those two things, and and creative ways that people are going to come up with, as we go through this stuff, like to okay, how do I how do I handle like these units with only these units that I have, and the way that those battles unfold, and being able to fold that into the lore, and the the not only the backstory but the current story, right? And really make it compelling beyond. I mean, if people just want to play, that's great, right? But people who are really into kind of digging into getting sort of an emotional attachment to to the story is certainly what we're hoping for. But I think if we're successful in doing that, it will be doubly fabulous.
Yeah, I gotta say, beyond my addiction to playing the game every time Steve comes over to actually get business work done, the lore and working on the lore is really one of my favorite things to do. And I at least think we did a fantastic job of building two factions that both have deep backstories and really existential crises going on back in their home systems that are driving them towards Proxima Centauri B, but from very different evolutionary standpoints. The humans, of course, had a massive disaster and isolated themselves from the Martian colonies, then came out of the disaster and are now trying to solve the overall devastation of Earth and the growing population. Meanwhile, the Skryox had achieved almost perfect harmony with their system of planets and peacefully integrating a whole bunch of different species into their overall communal social network mind, but now are struggling with this blight on their home planets that somehow seems to spread no matter what they've been doing. And it's just fantastic to then think about, okay, well, what would you do as a species? Well, let's go find another world that has nothing to do with our system, and let's see if we can set up a quarantine lab. Let's see if we can create an ark. And then you get these two species that just collide at the worst possible moment for all of them.
Right.
And sorry, I'm going to go on for hours, which we have, but
right. Please do.
It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I mean, I think actually one of the things that also I think is intriguing is we get excited about sort of the arc of these two civilizations and their conflict, and then some of the other players are going to sort of enter into this story. But I also am pretty excited about the fact that every one of our game pieces is an individual trackable game piece. So Gungnir Tank has a crew, and that crew has names, and that is going to actually be something that you can follow from skirmish to skirmish and campaign setting to campaign setting, and have a whole story evolve around each individual in the game, and sort of build up this idea of not just a campaign arc, but individual character arcs that will grow as part of the game as you play it.
That's one of my favorite things about the game pieces themselves, and the idea of being able to save individualized data on different game pieces. Your game piece will then be reflective of the experience you've had and what you've done in the context of this board game. And that's not something you ever see in tabletop games. And I think this game encapsulates that strange little uncanny valley for better between a lot of digital formats for games and a lot of traditional formats.
Yeah, we've seen story-based games in the past, but I would really say some of the mechanics are awkward. Gloomhaven leaps to mind, which I know a lot of people love it as a game, and as a story-based game where you can grow your characters over time. It's fantastic, but it's a lot of pieces to keep track of. It's a lot of effects to keep track of. And the fact that we can do it all with a server, and you can switch phones, you can move your pieces around, you can even loan your pieces to a friend if you want to give them, let's say, your high-level Space Ranger, and say, look, I've gotten this Space Ranger up to level 15, and he's now got access to all sorts of really cool weapons. Here, I'm going to lend him to you for your upcoming battle because you're trying to finish level 8 of the campaign. That's the sort of thing that we'll be able to really enable both now and moving forward as we enter into the next chapters, and you can then take your higher level characters and see what comes through.
And that's going to be optional, right, Jeremy? I mean, if you're playing against a new guy, right? Like, hey, my level 15 Space Ranger could wipe the floor with 5 of your guys, right? So we're planning on being able to turn that on and off, of course.
Well, I think the other thing sorry, good, Jeremy.
I was just going to answer Rob's question. No, it's one of the things that Steve and I talked a lot about is balance of the game, and also the balance of a new player versus a veteran player. And that's both in level of experience, but also just in the amount of time that you've spent with the game. And I'd say very few things are more frustrating to me than entering a video game platform and just getting my butt kicked left and right simply because somebody else has spent over 200 hours leveling these things up.
That's happening to me more and more often, especially as my reflexes continue to slow. Right?
That's different, but yeah, your higher level Space Ranger, if you want to enable all of his higher level capabilities during a match, will cost you more to draft. Right? He's got experience. His salary is higher, so he costs more to bring into the battle versus the level 1 Space Ranger, which is currently only 40 points. And so it could be that your super high level Space Ranger could wipe the floor with 10 of my Space Rangers, but they're going to cost about the same, my 10 versus your 1. And that's how we'll keep it balanced.
Right.
Yeah.
And this is what happens when the sound guy starts talking about mechanics that he actually knows nothing about.
It's a great question, though. A lot of people ask that. It's like, how do you prevent somebody from either buying into super high level characters, right? Hey, I'm just going to go find somebody who's been playing the game for years and just buy a whole bunch of high level pieces, and then I'm just going to win against all my friends. And fortunately, it won't work like that. You have to put in your own time, learn the balance of the different pieces, and develop your own working strategies. So experience matters. Don't get me wrong. Playing the game a lot matters, but having high level pieces won't win you the game if you don't know what you're doing.
I feel like if we hit the point where there is a secondary market of players attempting to buy well-used pieces because they're a higher level, I feel like that's a great problem to have.
Oh, that's a total win. Yeah.
I mean, I think we have a philosophy, right, which is that you can't pay to win, right? You have to win through your superior gameplay. You can unlock new abilities and things that are fun and sort of enhance the game by playing and getting experience for your different game pieces or characters. But it's one of the sort of fundamental things that we want to be sure is that anybody coming in who plays a good game has a good chance of being victorious. And I think that's important because I personally have played games where I get frustrated because someone has spent the $500 to get all the best cards or all the best pieces, and then I'm not going to spend $500, so I'm out.
I might be a culprit there.
Bill there says he's totally ready to pay to win. So, all right, Bill, we'll make an exception for you.
Bill, I'm open to bribes.
Yes, that is actually one thing as well. You can't pay to win. You can bribe the developers, and they will make sure that is totally acceptable.
Or bribe me, and I promise to give them the money.
Yeah. That's
a trusted courier.
Right.
We
no doubt.
To do maybe like a bassoon themed track in like the fungal forest.
I'm sorry. You dropped out at the very beginning, at least for me. What did you say?
Can we send out bribes to do like a bassoon themed track in the fungal forest?
Yeah. I'll see if I have a patch for that.
Dun, 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 dun.
Well, yeah, and that's it's so funny because that's like that's one of the kind of weirdest. It almost feels like cheating you know, just like MIDI music used to be so goofy and like, you know, and like very retro or whatever, you know, and being able to do cool stuff with that is one thing, but you know, but just like the amount of options that I have at my disposal is truly overwhelming, and it becomes, you know, and it becomes difficult to focus on a single vibe, you know. So like literally I have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of things I can do, and just, you know, and just randomly assigning a piece of music to a different, you know, bunch of these patches, you know, can produce pretty wildly different results. So one of the things that I try to, you know, do to myself to get myself to focus, you know, on a certain thing is limit myself. Say, okay, well, here are the three fundamental things you can use to do the music. Like you get these three patches. For this particular theme, you have, you know, you get to choose 4 notes. And so, you know, so make it happen. And it really, it's pretty interesting, you know, the way that limiting yourself in that way can open up like possibility. It really engages you creatively. You know what I'm saying?
Wait,
like,
I thought all rock music was just 3 chords.
Yeah, right, exactly. All the best stuff is, you know, and it's just power chords, you know, hopefully. But
I find,
you know,
that when it comes to visual art, it's very, very similar. Where
right.
If you look at a lot of the pieces, it's like, okay, how do I make a strong piece? Well, what are the 2 core colors? What's the prime? Well, like, you know, what is the color that's going to matter most to this composition? What'll matter least? And having that interplay is really, really important, actually, toward creating successful composition. I guess across any medium.
Right? Yeah, for sure. I'm almost done with my gin.
You know, I'm on coffee right now, but yeah. That sounds like a good idea.
Right.
Keep it work safe, Rob.
This time I will.
But Keely, that's a genius idea you said earlier. Speaking of feature requests that are going to make their way into the game, Rob, we need different sub-themes for each terrain. So when I move a unit into a terrain, if I'm the UEDF, I've got my core UEDF theme, but then I want a little sub-theme that I can kind of queue up when I move into the forest with the bassoons going.
Yeah, the Peter Wolf theme for sure.
Right,
comes to mind.
Yeah. Okay. All right, but guys,
you move into the basalt formations and you hear "Night on Bald Mountain."
No, and that's great. But I'm going to ask you to limit yourselves to only one type of terrain.
No.
Yeah,
no, right. That ship has sailed.
No, but that's a good idea. That's an interesting. It's an interesting idea.
But it doesn't have to come immediately. Like I said, the beauty of doing a lot of this in software is we can keep rolling these things out, and we all know that our VIP backers are going to get their own set of theme music that plays for the UEDF and the Scryox, which will be different than everybody else's theme music.
Yeah,
so
no, for sure.
You know,
and you know,
we'll have our pop theme, we'll have our K-pop theme, we'll have our
easy tiger. But
it's DLC.
Okay, but it's all DLC, in-app purchase.
Oh God, could you imagine? No, but it's true. It's in all seriousness, you know, I'd like to circle back a little bit because, you know, really, you know, the planet is essentially, you know, a character, if you will, in the game, right? Your environment is you know, I mean, I don't want to, like, you know, personify this too much, but you know, but the terrain and the planet itself really does play a role in, you know, in the overarching lore and mechanically and everything else, right? And certainly visually, and I think it's a really great suggestion to try and reflect that sonically as well. So yeah, I'm going to let that percolate for a little while.
Yeah. See, ideas come in, we work on them, we ship them.
Right, exactly. It's like nonstop around here, you guys. So, but that's really cool. That's an interesting suggestion. I am not going to make a note of it.
It'll come back up.
Oh wait, oh, no pun intended. I'm going to make a note of that. See what I did.
That
So
was,
I do.
that was very sharp of you, Rob.
I do think that the yeah, I mean that is one of the fun things. We have so many ideas, and I think the interesting thing is figuring out which ones to sort of pursue next. And a lot of that is based upon feedback we get on our Discord channel or feedback we get in the playtesting that we're doing. There's a bunch of features that I think we are excited about for the future, but we will probably ship the first version of the game without, because they are, minor enhancements that will, I think, make it, some fun eye candy stuff that we've been talking about. But I guess maybe just quickly, what features are you most excited about next? I know, Keely, you're excited about the area of effect attacks, because that's going to dramatically change, I think, the play of some of the units that we have.
The Stormbringer is going to be a menace. I think calculating damage fall off with AoE is going to be such a big thing. Or else, oh my gosh.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that excites me about adjustments like that is how it will force your opponents to change their strategies, how they sort of maneuver on the battlefield, because clustering everybody together in one place is going to become a very dangerous strategic decision. And I think there's a lot of other enhancements that sort of fall into that category as well, that will make it so that the strategy, we really want people to be able to win with multiple strategies, but at the same time, we want it to be something where we talked a little bit about rock, paper, scissors, where we really want it to be something where you have to recognize the strategy your opponent is pursuing and then adjust accordingly before it's too late. And I think that's one of the fun things about the game now is often halfway into a strategy, I realize I'm falling into a trap. and then I guess the question is, have I figured it out fast enough? So there's a lot of interesting sort of strategic options there. But I think one of the things that we've always been trying to balance is not just, sort of this chess-like strategy game, but also how do you keep everybody engaged, especially as you get up to more than 2 players. And the game is really playable with many players. We say 16 is the maximum, although that's not really a technical limit. It's probably just a practicality limit. But one of the things that we really focus on is how do you keep 7 people standing around the table engaged if you've got a 7-player game. And I think that's been one of the sort of interesting challenges. And because when we started, Jeremy, we actually were sort of going, like, everybody would take their full turn and then the next person would take their full turn. And it was plenty of time to go get a cup of coffee between turns if you weren't careful. Yeah,
at Starbucks. Or Pete's, rather. Sorry.
Yeah, well, depends on who was playing. Sometimes you really could go down to the store and buy coffee and grind it and cook it in your French press.
A nice pour over.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, that's some of the cool things that we've learned through a lot of play testing and a lot of the feedback that we get from friends and family as we play is I got so bored waiting for Rod to take his turn that, I gave up. Okay.
Call him out by name, did you?
I said Rob, didn't I?
That's what I thought you said. Yeah.
That's what I said. I'm sure I said Rob.
Called me out by name. That's also what I said.
Oh, okay. Good. Because I might have said something else.
Right.
But yeah, the point being, fine, now let's each move a unit. The next thing that we could do if we manage to get the playtesting and work through the functions is there is no technical reasons why Rift Zone Contact couldn't be a real-time strategy game. Everybody's moving their units and attacking all at once, or maybe everybody takes their turn all at once and then we resolve all of the output at the end of the turn. And if you moved a unit that I was trying to shoot, well, I miss. But that's got a lot of work to it, a lot of things to work through, but
Yeah, it's just
it's
that easy,
definitely
really.
something that I'm excited to try at some point.
That's interesting. That could be really bananas.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Actually, I think
has that been done?
Bananas?
Let's do more
Or
stuff.
we make
that
the
hasn't
units
been done yet.
slip all over the place when they try to move.
Right.
So a couple fun comments. Sheila says, the planet is a total diva. Just wait till she starts letting the two factions know what she thinks about their presence.
Spoilers.
I know. And Bill, he's ready for a big game. I think he played the duel at our convention and with his brother. So we definitely need to get that arranged sometime soon.
Yeah, we should definitely set up a full live stream game at some point.
That'd be great.
Yeah, I was going to ask you. I'm blue skying right now, but like, is there a way for us to, in any way, demonstrate, what you're actually seeing through the phone, like on this stream, or is that? Have we even tried that? Is that just like a non-starter, or?
I don't know.
I mean, I'd be curious. I think, I don't know.
We've done some of that. If you go to the Kickstarter, there's some video that captures some of that. But it's a good question. We've mostly haven't invested in a ton of video production. We've mostly invested in trying to make the game as fun as possible. But it would be great to be able to tell the story more completely through some educational videos there. So I think that's got to be on our list here for the near future.
I could totally roll the dice and do the thing that they always tell you to never do as a developer, and I could plug a phone into the laptop and just try to live start a game.
Why not, Jeremy? Live dangerously.
Oh,
what could possibly go wrong? There's only 9 hours left in the Kickstarter.
It's
That's
weird.
right. When you crash Ram's video feed, she'll be so happy. You know?
Right. Weird for Steve to be the one saying why not, and me sitting here kind of going, I don't think.
Yeah, this isn't like most of our meetings.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right.
Yeah. Anyway.
Let's see.
The folks on the YouTube are saying do it. So Jeremy, make it happen.
Do it. Go on, do it. All right. Let's see what happens.
I'd be real curious to see if this is a horrible idea. As many of mine.
Why would that stop us?
Right.
What could possibly go wrong?
We're seasoned professionals at the whole live streaming.
Yes. For
Indeed.
sure.
All right. Give me 3 seconds. Well, maybe 12.
You have 2.
Well, before the stream blows up, interested to see again back to the AOE introduction. When it comes to smaller units, like your classic like Space Ranger, how much better does the unit get when he has AOE on something like a grenade?
It's a great question. I think actually it's one of the things that we'll obviously be focused on balancing well. I think that, we've got a bunch of other kind of enhancements that are coming with that in terms of, the limited numbers of grenades or different limited numbers of missile strikes, things to try and maintain game balance. It's one of the things that I think we benefit from being able to play test quickly. Jeremy and I can run through a couple play tests in a short period of time. And it lets us make sure that as we make live adjustments to the game, that we're not causing things to go out of balance. And of course, individuals who play test and spending time with you guys play testing, that all helps a lot. I mean, I remember at Gen Con, Keely, every night, right, we would play test with people. We would go home, we'd modify the game rules or the balance in the game. We'd play till midnight, and then we'd
or
get
later
to a point where we were pretty happy, and then we would do it again the next day. And that I think that ability to really quickly iterate and to try different things has really served us well in terms of even when we introduce a radically new capability like the burrowing of the Mauler or the embed on the Sting or some of these other things, damage over time of the corrosive nanites. It's really it's been easy for us to kind of get back into a reasonable balance for the game so that every piece feels like it's kind of worth the points you spent for it, but not sort of out of sync with everything else.
I think actually when it comes to starting to do things like limit the amount of grenades or missiles or ammo in general that a unit has, it results in really, really interesting game dynamics where it promotes this sort of classic aggro versus control archetype where units that have limited resources will inherently have to deal more damage to balance out the fact the resources are limited. But if you play the game too fast and you can't hit an end game, now you end up in a scenario where you can deal almost no damage, and your enemy units can still attack as they please when they're using these sort of organic-based weapons or physical claws and things like that. And I think I really like those types of game states because that dynamic, in card games and in games like this, always results in really exciting games where the aggro player, any experienced aggro player, is going to play the game out very, very quickly until it hits that crux where they just start to run out of resources, and the player playing a slower, more mid-ranged game gets the edge and then takes the game from there. But it's always going to be a really challenging dynamic and a really exciting dynamic where one player is trying to finish the game in that first handful of turns and the other player is playing the long game.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And I think one of the things I sort of appreciate is I've played games where I've been very aggressive and I've played games where I've been very conservative, and there's time and place for each. And one of the neat things about Ripstone Contact is there's not just one victory condition, right? That we've got victory conditions where you need to hold a piece of territory for a certain period of time. And so your opponent is motivated to move in quick. They can't just let you sit there and be king of the mountain for too long, or else they'll lose the game. And we have capture the flag, where sort of being able to do hit and run stuff is really important. And we have games where you're just trying to eliminate your opponent, in which case you sort of want to be careful how much you expose yourself and try and take out their most damaging units first. And so the fact that we've got a bunch of different victory conditions, and we'll keep adding more to make new kinds of gameplay, is I think one of the things that's fun about the game. And each of those different victory conditions can force a different set of tactics, or at least make certain tactics much more viable than they would be in a different victory condition. So
no, it's very exciting, especially when it comes to again these stashed experience on individual pieces, because you end up in these scenarios too where as an individual you can create a piece that is very, very different from expectations. It's something that comes to mind when I think of Pokemon, and when people play competitive Pokemon, it is you can spend your extra stat points in ways that completely or largely change how something is meant to function. So normally this is a fast attacker. Now it's very strangely bulky, and all the things that should knock this out don't knock it out anymore, which results in a very different game. And those are hidden stats from other players. So something like that in a game like this also creates a very different dynamic. Where what if you can create a Stormbringer that is faster than expected and has a little more ammo in the tank? Does that finish out a game sooner, or is it extra bulky? And does it have less missiles in the tank that do more damage? Things like that.
What I'm wondering right now is what the thing that you just did is doing to the layout of the overlay right now.
Yeah, I think
that's
unfortunately, Jeremy, it's not. That's not really cooperating with the.
Oops. Yeah. All right. Let's stop that.
That's awesome, though. Hey, look at that! I managed to spoil something else.
Well played.
Yeah. Hey,
but
behind the curtain here, real quick, could someone send me the actual URL so I can to this live stream?
Nope.
So I can A, see it, and B, pass it along. Luckily, we realized the error of my ways early on before I sent out the wrong bloody link.
I just threw it in the chat for you there, Rob. So
thank you, my friend.
You're all set.
Great. Oops, good.
And Jeremy, I don't know, maybe you can just put the phone up to the screen here and sort of walk people through the start of the game there. Yep, we can see it.
Yeah, we can walk through the start of the game. There we go. Almost left, right,
there you
left.
go. And you have
it's hard when it's mirrored, right? Title screen, tap new game.
Again, super pre-alpha, ladies and gentlemen, but still pretty cool. Like I'm hoping that you can actually demonstrate some of the augmented reality stuff, which I think is looking very fancy.
That might be hard in this format, but
it's a little harder.
What I think we can do is Jeremy and I had some luck the last time we sort of set up some cameras and did that, so we'll try and get something out before the end of this week that will show some gameplay.
Yeah, well, and there's a lot of videos on the Kickstarter page, so I encourage everybody to go take a look at the Kickstarter page. You can see the videos.
Your credit cards handy.
You can see all of the videos. You can see a lot of the gameplay worked out that way. And if you want some hints as to what the campaign mode is going to be, watch the long form video, which includes the animation content on the first encounters, because the campaign is playing through a lot of the story that was skipped over in that movie to understand what happened between first contact of the UEDF and the Scryox and when the rift opened.
Yeah, and I think there have been, I think through Facebook and some of our other social media, there's been a lot of lore that's been dropped and tidbits about the various players in the game, units in the game, and the interaction and the kind of storyline. So I definitely encourage people to check on that. But I think maybe we can put together on the Kickstarter as well some additional lore drops for people who are following along and want to learn more about the state of the conflict and the state of both the Scryox and the human societies. I think there's a lot of interesting things about the Scryox that we've teased, but that maybe haven't explained in a lot of detail. And of course, humanity has been through some rough days before this discovery of Proxima Centauri and the conflict with the Scryox. So I think those are some of the fun story elements that I'm looking forward to sharing more of.
Yeah, I actually I guess in the art side of things, something that I've been really enjoying as well is the design process of creating Scryox, because we wanted this classic, man versus alien look, but making that different from existing media is always an interesting challenge. And I think something that was present in a lot of the early concept art that I really tried to lean into now is the idea of these sort of crustaceous things. It always comes to mind the idea of carcinization, where so many different evolutionary lines of creatures evolve back into crabs because it's just such a functional form. So it's interesting to keep that in mind as I go through this, and I'm often find myself referencing things like amphipods, which are like these small shrimp-like creatures, and seeing how do the plates overlay, like a lot of deep sea animals that keep a lot of these very strange and organic forms, but look very dense and well built and hard to hit.
Yeah, I love the design of the Scryox, and I think they're fun, and I think I've shown this before, but they're also, these miniatures are really fun to paint. See if I can get this close enough to that.
Mini.
Yeah, and so personalizing them and making them sort of something that you can sort of have your army look a little different than everybody else's. One of the things that we're trying to do is to get to our funding goal so that we can have colored minis. And like, here's an example of a colored Scryox Scarab. We've got here's a colored UEDF, so that just makes them stand out a little bit better on the battlefield, and of course makes them a little bit easier to paint for your color scheme as well. But the individual miniatures are fun right out of the box, but personalizing them is a fun thing too. Definitely, I spent a lot of time after dinner painting and trying to get them just right for the next battle.
Start customizing, paint all your Scryox blue, keep everyone.
That's crazy. let's not get crazy, Keely. Although, honestly, right, Skryox they're all a little different, and so your army of blue Skryox could definitely work.
It'd be interesting too as we start getting into this idea of different hive clans in later iterations, because then colors are going to be really, really interesting to play with.
Yeah, one of the things I'm most excited about is that the idea is that this hive clan that humanity has first established on Proxima Centauri is sort of the hive clan that's responsible for terraforming their miners and, you know, sort of trying to set up the initial base, but they're not the bulk of the Skryox. They're one of 5 different hive clans that have their own sort of politics and ideas, and like the humans, they've not really gone into this conflict expecting a battle, so they're trying to spin up their ability to resist and to fight, just as humanity is trying to dig through its arsenal and its technologies to figure out what they can do to repel the Skryox. So I think that's one of the fun things, is that the storyline sort of tells the story of an escalating conflict where sort of both sides haven't really brought to bear everything that they can as they sort of learn about each other, and so there's lots of opportunity to grow the different units in the game, the different factions, and the storyline.
It's actually something that I've been really interested about as we move deeper into, you know, different iterations of the characters, you know, as this base is being established, and it's something we've talked about. It's character specialization, and that idea that a lot of these things weren't initially put here to fight. They were here to terraform, and they were here to colonize. So, and what does it look like to repurpose, you know, all these creatures that have been, you know, selectively created to mine as weapons?
Yeah, exactly.
I think the Maul is the most straightforward example of that.
Yeah,
and we've talked before about kind of which miniatures or artwork or units we each are our favorites. Jeremy and I have talked about it a little bit, but and I'll just reiterate, the Mauler has always been one of my favorites. I love the look of it. I love the effect of it on the battlefield, and I love the sound effects it makes when it finally gets within mandible range.
Oh yeah.
Jeremy, of course.
So we're clear, Jeremy is not holding up the Mauler.
I am not. I'm holding up my favorite. My favorite being the Excalibur.
There's a Mauler in the top corner of my screen, right there.
Oh wait, I've stolen Steve's painted Mauler, so I have to show off Steve's painted Mauler.
There you go.
Exactly.
Go slower. Yeah, there you go. Who's hungry?
But I was curious, Rob, do you have any favorites?
Yes.
Which go
What
first?
is my absolute favorite, though? Funny enough, I think generally the Mauler, but I am a big fan of the Stalker. In gameplay wise, it plays into a very specific niche as like the classic ranged attack sniper creature. But it's been fun to delve more into that design, because it's a very unique design. It's not a, I guess this general silhouette of the creature is something that is very classic, but I think well differentiated. The only time I've seen this sort of shape worked in is in like really classic space bugs. So it's fun to have this as a hive creature, but as a sentient, individualized thing as well.
Yeah, I love the backstory for the Stalker, which was that it, you know, in sort of the ancient, you know, pre-technology times, the Stalker was an actual predator that fed upon other Skryox, and that eventually it sort of got integrated into their collective, but it still has some of these characteristics of being a predator that's a bit aloof and above the apart from the rest of the collective. So I do agree too that it's sort of it's a very interesting design, and like I said, painting it is really fun. I painted a few of them, and every one of them I make pretty distinct. Rob, what about you?
Yeah, I think I'm kind of a Mauler guy myself. I mean, I don't know if it's kind of part of the nostalgia of the whole purple worm thing, or you know, or the way it can just sort of draw other units into its maw and, you know, chip or shred them. and it's just fun for me to play, like at the burrowing and doing all the cool Muller stuff is pretty fun. And I think I overall I prefer today. I prefer the Scryox just because I like the more and doing the sound design on the sort of more organic stuff was and we sprinkled in with with like the whole nanite aspect and the whole gravity control aspect. Like how do you like it may surprise you to know that I my primary reasons for liking this stuff are as much sonic as anything else, right? Like and maybe maybe I think maybe because the UEDF was a little bit more straightforward, I guess, conceptually. Like, well, it's a missile, okay, oh yeah, what does a short range missile sound like versus like what is a what is something that's a little more indirect fire sound like, and how do I and how do I do that versus like, yeah, but what does it sound like when this thing is like crawling or when a gravity power is being invoked, or what is the nexus like, what does she sound like, right? Because I figure since this whole thing is this sort of almost matriarchal society that the Scryox have going, like how do I represent that sort of subtly but not so subtly, like you can kind of hear what's going on. It was a lot more interesting and problematic, if you will, to do Scryox stuff. So I think most of the Scryox units I enjoy more than the UEDF stuff.
I will say one unit I do love is the Humble Space Ranger. I really like what you did with the sort of the very sort of bulky upper body armor. I always think it's sort of a practical design. It almost reminds me of like the design of somebody who's doing the bomb disposal. In terms of you want to protect your head and your torso as much as you possibly can. And I think it's just a really neat and somewhat unusual design compared to everything else that's out there.
Functional, right? Like it's just here's this hunk of armor, right?
That's a big thing that actually I sought to do was, if we have this classic base Space Ranger unit, how do you visually differentiate that from every other Space Ranger out there? Because it's like you have a lot of games in the same space, like Warhammer. You have so many. Like you have things like StarCraft, and like there's a lot, and there's so many different iterations of this base idea. So it's like, what can I do to really change that? And the design ended up settling in on was this really bulky upper body, but combined with that almost tank-like shell around the head. Almost like if you took Buzz Lightyear and you put him in like a futuristic mining suit and you lowered the dome on it. And I think that they did a lot to make them feel very powerful, but also make them not feel like existing Rangers.
Yeah, I think it turned out fantastic, and they're also fun to paint. So I like that.
Yeah.
Well, let's see. What else can we share with people that they'd be interested in?
Well, Steve, I don't think you shared what your favorite upcoming feature is.
You caught me. That's true. Wow, it's. I have to say that I feel like every week there is some new feature or some new addition that surprises and delights me. I think the latest was one of the pieces of feedback we got was you have to do a lot of scanning in the game to sort of identify your pieces on the battlefield, and that's largely an artifact of the prototype software that we had developed, and we had the sort of choice of programming language that we had originally used.
Say a little bit more about that, Steve.
I mean, just briefly, when we started, for a number of sort of random reasons, we used Flutter as the platform for developing the game, it was cross-platform in theory, but then we very quickly decided we're just going to develop on one OS just for streamlining things. And the limitations of Flutter were that it's using sort of outdated RFID or NFC code, and it's using sort of older generations of AR code. So it's just not as capable as doing it as a native development or using something like React or something, right? Jeremy, am I using the right software jargon there?
You used a lot of words.
Close enough. Anyway,
say more about that.
So
we got locked in. I mean, the short answer is we got locked in. We chose a cross-platform development system with a set of plugins, and it was right at the point when a lot of things were coming out, and a lot of the platforms were accelerating their support for augmented reality. And plugin support for these cross-platform systems always lags behind a little bit the advancement. And maybe sharing with the viewers the fact that Steve has been noodling on this concept for somewhat more than 6 years. And I've been writing code on this concept for somewhat more than 3 years. And so 3 years ago, these were all the correct decisions to say, let's do cross-platform. Let's use this plugin. We expect another plugin is going to come along a little bit later. But the base platforms and even some of the other cross-platform choices like Unity really exploded as far as the features that they support at the time, which is why the production app is full on Unity, because it allows us to build a true cross-platform system with fully integrated native quality 3D augmented reality, take advantage of all the systems. But just given the nature of how far along we made it with the prototype, we made a conscious decision that we don't want to ship the prototype. It's 3 years of organically grown code, and as a software developer, you generally learn, if you've been organically growing code, it gets a little viney, it gets a little bit spaghetti-like. And so before your production, it's always best to kind of clean the garden, plant it fresh, and come out with the latest and the greatest.
Yeah. So, and this sort of ties back to my favorite feature, which is 3 years ago when we started this, and we started on Flutter, but we actually also had much more limited ambitions in the vision for what the game was going to be. And so it has grown to be a much more ambitious and, sort of enhanced experience beyond where we were 3 years ago. So I have known, as we sort of developed, that there are limitations of sort of this prototype app. So what delights me is when there's something where we, a month ago, I said, Jeremy, I really wish we could do this to prove it out. And you told me, I don't think you can do that with the prototype app. And then I come to your house and say, okay, I've done it. Let's try it. So we just did that recently with sort of the selection of the targets on the battlefield, where before there was a lot of extra interaction, and now it's much smoother and more intuitive. And that makes me really happy, because you have this vision of what you want the experience to be. You have a sense that it's going to be better, but if you can actually try it and prove to yourself that you've enhanced the experience and made it more enjoyable and more obvious and more and faster, then it kind of removes all that niggling doubt that you have in the back of your head that maybe there's you've missed something. So that would make what makes me happy. My favorite feature is the one that I didn't think I was going to get to try before the production app was done, and there's been a lot of those along this journey.
Right, and all that's just a big act. Steve just likes to say, give Jeremy an impossible task, knowing that he's enough of a nerd that he's going to stay up till 3 o'clock that morning making it happen.
That's right. I always start with, I don't think you can do this, Jeremy.
Sorry, Steve. I couldn't keep quiet any longer.
Yeah, it's fair.
I tell you, one of my favorite, I think at this point I'm allowed to call it myths, of Steve Jobs and the original Apple, was, you know, mythically speaking, this Silicon Valley lore. He went to Xerox PARC, where they were doing a lot of research into this newfangled thing called graphical user interfaces, and saw windows, virtual windows, overlapping each other on the screen, and assumed that underneath it there was an engine that was keeping track of them and allowing you to drag and drop them with one on top of the other, and this sort of imaginary stacking of them. And so when he went back to his dev team, he said, do that. And they're like, we don't know how to do that. And so they called over to Xerox PARC and they're like, how did you guys do that? And Xerox PARC was like, we didn't. That was just a prototype. But of course, Steve Jobs had it in his head. And he's like, figure it out. And his engineering team figured it out. And that's where a lot of the original Macintosh UI was born. So I sort of see Steve every once in a while as the other Steve coming along and saying, I think it should work like this. And the answer is, I don't know how to do that. Let me go look. And then, right around 4 a.m., 4:30 a.m., my sleep buzzed brain suddenly pops into this wacky idea, like, let's try this. And sometimes it works.
Right. And
sometimes I break the entire thing and I tell Steve we're not going to be able to play test for a week.
Right. But it is pretty, isn't it? It is pretty weird, like generally, how you can get an idea in your head and you just sort of table it for a little while, and then you come back and you go, like, oh my, I got it. Like, here's how it goes.
Oh yeah, all the time.
Yeah, that's what I hear.
3 to 4 a.m. space as well is this weird sort of, people like think of it as a witching hour, but it is an oddly productive creative space. You find yourself up that late and you're willing to sacrifice the next 3 days,
Yeah. Well, there's that like slight mind alteration of both like adrenaline because you're super motivated to get it done, and lack of sleep, so you're not really thinking 100% clearly, and then the really creative ideas pop in.
Well, certainly not linearly, right? I mean,
sometimes that's what's required, especially with the modern programming language. Is thinking linearly is going to hold you back.
Right.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything linear about the code that we have in the prototype app, Jeremy.
Yeah, no.
Oh, like you could tell.
Yeah.
it's getting better.
Yeah, no, yeah.
No, it's held up well. I mean, I think actually that's been there's been so many things that are informed better because we were able to build that prototype application and try them. So
yeah,
as we build a platform that's going to last for the next decade, it's really helps to have tried out some things, figured out what matters and what doesn't. And there's a bunch of neat enhancements that we're talking about, and we can plan for those. We're talking a little bit about sort of speed of the game and sort of how do you keep the pace up. And if, I don't know if we mentioned this earlier, but sort of the idea that maybe there's even a countdown timer for people to kind of get them moving, sort of like speed chess. So there's all kinds of fun things that we can add in to make the game, more tactical, more strategic, move it faster,
Yeah, like not quite real-time strategy, right?
Yeah, not quite, exactly. Not quite, almost real-time strategy.
ARTS.
Yeah, there we go.
And
almost real-time.
And I don't mean to like speak out of turn, and if you guys don't want to do this, that's cool. But Healy and I basically went on about how we were creatives and our creative process and stuff. But I don't remember you guys. I mean, I saw your previous live stream, but I mean, I don't remember you guys really digging into your pedigree. And I think it's worth mentioning because even though we are currently just a handful of guys doing stuff, we're not a handful of kids doing stuff. If that wasn't
not our first rodeo,
three of us aren't.
Oh,
right? But I mean, I think it's worth talking about your respective pedigrees, and if you mind.
Yeah, thanks, Rob. I'll start, Jeremy. I guess. So I've been working in technology for many years. I've worked at Apple and Google. I've actually worked at Nike on wearable products. I've worked at Intel for a number of years. I even was a designer back in the day on the intuitive surgical Da Vinci system for doing minimally invasive robotic surgery, and worked on the surgeon's console and designed the user interface there.
Didn't you do the optics there?
And I did the 3D viewing system there too, which was really fun and pretty cutting edge at the time.
Steve, had you ever done optics before?
No, Rob. But that was back in the day when you just figured it out. I guess today is still that day because we're just figuring it out on this day. But
that's what I'm saying. And forgive me for Harry Met Sallying you here, but you know, I like to brag on Steve a lot because Steve really is one of the smartest guys I know, and you know, and in ways that I am not, right? Like I'm a super creative, and Steve is a super, you know, intellectual problem solver type. And one of the things that I like to brag about is a couple things. One of which is, again, on the Da Vinci intuitive surgical product, which you can go ahead and Google and see what that is. Steve did the prototype. I don't know if they're still using that exact thing, but he developed the thing, not having worked on optics ever previously, where the surgeon would look through the viewfinder and be able to see these little things that are doing the surgery from across the room and see them truly in 3D, like me doing this, like looking through that viewfinder. I was able to literally on an early prototype of the thing, I was able to literally like latch into the thing and grab the stuff and really I was able to tie a knot in a piece of string from across the room. And Steve had never done that before. The Apple Cube, was it, not Steve?
Apple Cube was my first project at Apple.
Right. Is that computer museum still present over there off 101?
It is, yeah.
It is, yeah. The Apple Cube is there in that museum as a sort of a demonstration of I don't know what they would call it, but just sort of this innovation in computing in the sort of form factor, right? And one of the things about the Apple Cube was that it was the first. You stop me when I'm mistaking things, but if I recall correctly, and this was a while ago, but it was the first. Like it didn't have a fan in it, and you couldn't. This hadn't really been done before. Am I right about that? Like on this with this sort of processing power, there was no fan, and Steve solved the thermodynamics around like how do you use convection rather than a fan in order to cool this thing without a fan, without completely silently. That was Steve did that.
You're making me blush, Rob.
Well, good, because you should, because we haven't bragged on you enough, and that's something that I don't get to do as much now that we're not roommates anymore. But Steve's pretty great, and he's been focused on this a lot. And Jeremy, and we're going to get to you, though I know less about you, but maybe Steve knows more. Jeremy and Steve have worked together a lot as well. So do go on, Steve. Where else have you worked?
I don't know what else I could say, except that I have been really lucky to work on a lot of really interesting projects. And I've been lucky that a lot of them are things I'm passionate about, but this boosted reality and Ripzone Contact have been some of the most fun I've had building a product. And because it's combining not just some really neat technical execution that we're doing, but also building out a whole world and building out a whole game, and most of all, seeing how excited people get. We had this play test at the last convention, and there was a kid there with his dad, and they had so much fun. And I forget the little boy's name, but he was so engaged and so captivated, and wanted to learn everything. And just seeing how much investment he had in what we were building, and how quickly he picked it up, and it was 10 minutes he was playing right along with his dad, and they had a blast, and that's super rewarding. And And one of the things I love in terms of working with this team of people is that we all feed on each other's ideas and come up with ways to make the game better and make the story better, and then to sort of see how that is reflected by the people that we share it with. Couldn't get any better than that.
Yeah, and I think it's worth mentioning, that like the success that we've, and by we I mean you, have had, playtesting with kids, right? Like imagine handing that same kid the rules for some other tabletop, like traditional, if you will, like tabletop war game, and saying, okay, let's get to it, right? It's non-starter, but instead what they get is like this really cool thing that's easy to learn, and not only that, like the AR stuff that I'm seeing now is like smacks of the Star Wars chess game that was completely boggling our collective minds back in the day.
I got to interrupt you because we've got another backer.
What?
We've got another backer. Time for your happy dance.
That's right.
I'm not. I don't.
You gotta dance, Rob. Come on.
Gotta dance. It's part of the rules. Company rules. It's in the bylaws.
I'm gonna rock back and forth in my wire mom.
It's what he did back in high school, so it's fine. That is him dancing.
Right. That's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Old trauma.
That's fine.
Prom.
Right.
Yeah. Prom trauma. Trauma.
All right.
Sorry to interrupt you, but I want to applaud every time somebody.
Oh heck yeah!
Absolutely.
Here's enough to back, and if for anybody in the video, or sorry, in the chat, drop your questions. Honestly, if there's any question that you need an answer to help you either decide to back or decide what level to back, I'd say that all of us at least have a little bit of experience playing the game occasionally. Steve and I might know a little bit about the various box sets. So any questions whatsoever. Otherwise, we're just going to keep rambling.
Right. And no one wants that.
And nobody wants that. So I think we're going to hear a little bit about you, Mr. Bennett.
Yeah, sure.
Oh yeah. Well, one more thing about Steve, just since we're all piling on.
Right.
And trust me, I'll segue, but I really admire that Steve, as far as I know, manages to have a patent or a co-authored patent in pretty much every industry he's gone into. Which is amazing, right? That speaks to the sort of mind that will dive in and look at a brand new problem space and conceive of something like Riftstone Contact and say, I see a problem here. Let's go solve that. So anyway, we'll finish off on Steve.
Well, Jeremy, I think you're the only one of my friends who has more patents than I do. So.
Ooh, solid burn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You want to talk?
Do I? Okay, I'm not going to go look that up right now.
Yeah.
But yeah,
but who's keeping track?
Who's keeping score? Pachaw.
We are.
Yeah, most of my pedigree is pretty much mongrel, Rob. Since you're asking about pedigree, mostly random Scots-Irish. No, just kidding.
Not that kind of pedigree.
Not that kind of pedigree. Yeah, I mean, I have to say,
Jeremy is a stand-up comedian by night.
Yeah. The only way I can realistically talk about my own career is to just kind of talk about following two themes, like following a passion for learning new stuff and following a passion for making people go, wow. And nothing makes me happier than going to the playtests that Steve and I go to and having somebody just take 5 minutes to learn the game, and then they're looking at the augmented reality view, seeing what they can do, and their first reaction is, oh, this is cool.
Right.
So that's pretty much driven my entire career. I started off in sort of post university work, and soon worked for a tiny company called SegaSoft, and we were contracted to build the world's first console game network, because Sega was going to be releasing this thing called the Dreamcast, and the Dreamcast was the first console that shipped with a built-in modem. And if you knew the right people or could buy the right stuff, you could even swap the modem out. It was a modular component. You could swap the modem out and plug in a Ethernet adapter. So I had a Dreamcast attached to a home network that was Ethernet, and then the DSL line back when we had those things. So that was a lot of fun. That was
dual channel DSL or just the?
Yeah. So that was a ton of fun working for Sega Soft, building up the Dreamcast network, conceiving of these. Of course, now everybody in the chat is going to say, "Well, duh," but conceiving of this concept of an online console game connected network where your network experience was outside of your game experience, and you could have lobbies and chat rooms and leaderboards all outside of a game, and you could find people in this overall social space and agree to go play a game with them, and we would latency optimize it for dial-up to say, well, these 3 people are closest to you network wise, not geographically, and then we'll play. You guys can play a game of whatever. So that was a lot of fun. And that.
So Jeremy, let me get this. Had that been done before?
No, that hadn't been done before, especially for a console. Now, sadly, not all good ideas survive, and the Dreamcast network, as we had built it, didn't survive. But it's okay. A lot of those concepts, about 10? Let's say, be generous. Let's say about 10 years later, were released by Xbox as Xbox Live. So it's okay that the idea survived.
Did any of the code live on, or was that all proprietary? Yada, yada, yada.
It's all proprietary. The sad thing, maybe not sad, the rule of working for tech companies is always everything that you build for the tech company stays with the tech company.
Right.
And you consider yourself lucky that you're allowed to talk about it.
Right.
Your
NDA just expired last week, right?
Yeah, my rule of thumb is that when the company goes out of business, my NDA does too.
Right.
Because they can't afford the lawyers anymore. But I've had a lot of fun working for a lot of different companies. I worked for McAfee for a while, exploring what it looked like to have mobile security apps, and why the hell would I want to put any kind of security on my mobile phone, because nothing will happen there.
Certainly not.
Had a great time working with Steve on WebOS when we were at Palm and then HP. A lot of cool stuff that we came out with, both from a hardware standpoint of a truly easy to use slide keyboard that you can just kind of like flip. You have a full-on QWERTY touch type keyboard. One of my favorite small pocket size phones is something that we worked on together, and a whole bunch of super fun concepts like a multitasking carded UI where you could swipe up and then flip through your various apps and they look like little cards, and if you wanted to kill one, you could throw it off the screen and that would be your gesture for killing apps.
That's
so again,
I feel like
despite the fact that that mobile system didn't continue, at least a lot of the concepts made their way into Android and into iOS. And I do have to say, I think that some of that code probably lives on, because I have an LG TV upstairs that runs WebOS, and I like to fool myself into thinking maybe some of the code I wrote is still tickling around in the back of that TV.
You may not know this, but I'm actually doing all of this on an LG TV as we speak, running WebOS. I have a 48-inch LG TV, LG OLED. I think it's an A1 or 2 sitting on my desktop monitor, because you need that. But that's why if anyone's actually been sticking around long enough to see it, sometimes I get darker. Look, that's because the thing wants to dim a little bit to But anyway, I'm
yeah.
Wow.
So that a lot of fun products I worked on.
Yeah.
most recently, before deciding to work full time on Rift Zone Contact, I had a lot of people are going to laugh at this. I had a lot of fun working for JP Morgan on new innovative ways that you can use your banking system, use your mobile apps through your banking system to become more inclusive, more social, and engage more privately with a lot of things. So, the concept of building a truly global digital identity based on the fact that you're already globally banking internationally was something that was a lot of fun to build. But again, nothing is as much fun as going to these game conferences and watching people go, "Oh, wow," every time they play Rift Zone Contact.
So, Jeremy, I know a lot of times we talk about accessibility and how important it is to us that people can jump in, play the game, understand what they're supposed to do, and that it appeals to, a wide range of different play styles and player capabilities. So we want inexperienced people to be able to play it. We want experienced people to be able to play it. We want kids to be able to play it. But I was going to ask, so what are a couple features that you really love about the game today? Like, what are the things that make you smile every time that you play? And I'm going to ask you, Rob, and Keely, kind of what your favorite pieces of the gameplay are in a moment.
Yeah. Well, I mean, for me, I've long been passionate about accessibility and inclusivity in pretty much everything. And one of the things that I try to do every time we have conversations about our website or about our app is, try to think about what is that like for somebody who doesn't hear very well? What is that like for somebody who's neurodivergent and has, ADHD or autism, or is overwhelmed by too much information all at once? And, it's probably obvious, I've got my own bias towards making sure that things are approachable for the visually impaired as well. So I'd say one of my favorite features as an overall theme throughout the app is that every time we try to make sure that there are multiple ways to do things. So there generally isn't a single correct way to choose an enemy to attack or to move your piece in a particular order, etc. When it's your turn, we play Rob's awesome theme music for your faction, but we also vibrate the phone, and we also update the user experience. So it's like trying this multi-sensory approach. And if you take too long to take your turn, we'll vibrate the phone again to sort of give you that little stimulus to wake you up. So yeah, I mean, for me, it may sound like a small thing, but the fact that almost every cue that you can get is going to come as a visual, as a sound, as a vibration. I haven't quite figured out how to make the smell of the phone change based on whether it's your turn or not, but I'll get back to you.
I think just touching it with your clammy hands does the trick.
Ouch. Keely, how about you? What is a favorite feature of the game that you really like?
Favorite feature is how it simplifies and streamlines tabletop gaming. The fact that you can do every aspect of a war game and be able to do it in like 2 or 3 clicks instead of having to run damage numbers for every interaction is massive.
With the rules lawyer to your left.
Yeah, the rules lawyer is built in. No one can rules lawyer you.
Right.
That's really, really big for accessibility. At the most, like it's not the most basic level, but at a very basic level of the enjoyability and functionality of the game.
Rob, how about you?
Well, if it's not clear yet, I'm a big fan of the augmented reality stuff. I think it's super cool. Like especially how far, again, a bit of a broken record here, but like how far it's come, from where we started to where it is now. Like the early screenshots, which even in our video header of the of the Kickstarter, right, was where we were then versus like if you scrolled, and even some of like the closer to where we are now to where we really are now. And this is we're talking about an evolution of of like not that much time. It's gotten so much cooler, and I haven't even seen this stuff. So behind the curtain a little bit, like the Unity development that's going on is, I'm told, even cooler, and I can't wait. Like I don't know. I'm just I'm super fired up about that because it's it's super shiny and blah blah blah, but it's it's, I don't know. I think it's, what's the word? Rad.
Well, I think you're absolutely right that we're just scratching the surface of what we're going to be able to do with augmented reality. And while we focused on sort of the gameplay elements, there's so much sort of neat eye candy and sort of fun interactions that we can make both clearer to players, but also more engaging and more cinematic. That I'm really excited about that as well.
In service of, yeah, right. Me too. But I want to add, like, I want to also add one thing that, like, as has been mentioned elsewhere, but not, I think, tonight. If we wanted to make a video game, we'd have made a video game. But this is sort of in aid of the immersion, but still, holding on to the fact that we have these miniatures that we hope people are gonna really like the heft of, and like moving around and stuff like that, and but like being able to see it through this lens and just watching, like, I don't know, but again, still, like, finding the balance between making this stuff all look beautiful, but not really in aid of gameplay or in aid of the overall concept of, like, miniatures war game, like in person with my buddy.
Yeah, we had a great conversation with one of our playtesters at KublaCon, where he came into chatting with us about the game, and I don't want to say that he was negative, but he said, "I just want you guys to know, one of our rules when we play games is no phones at the table." Like, no phones at the table. You're going to have to do a fantastic job to convince me that this is the right thing. And then he did a play test, and at the end of it, he's like, "You did it. You made the game better by including the phone, and because the phone is such an integral part of the game, it encourages people to not be off, browsing Blue Sky or Mastodon or whatever is popular right now."
Right. And it's only this big, so, right? I mean, like,
yeah.
We're also used to
it's the challenge,
you're not
though,
doing this the whole time.
Yeah, like, exactly. But I will say it's the challenge. I've played a number of board games, especially D&D with friends, and you're going around. You've got your initiative roll. Some of us are figuring out what our next actions are, and then you get to that one person who is on their phone doing whatever. You're like, "Hey, wake up!" And then suddenly they have to go figure out what they're doing. Having it integrated into the phone means two things. One, what you're able to do is right there in front of you, super easy to figure out. But two, it's on the phone, so you have to pay a little bit of attention. You can switch and accomplish things now that we got that feature working, but definitely it encourages you to keep a focus on the game. So I like to say it becomes a nice gateway. Adding the technology to the board game helps a lot of people who wouldn't necessarily dive into board games start playing it. But as another side effect, using the technology as part of a physical social experience does help pull people who are possibly addicted to their phones or only want to engage with cool new technology into another experience that is super fun and super social.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And I think it is something that we're constantly trying to think through, because we really do want to be sure that we're living up to our mixed reality concept, which is that it can't just be virtual. And on the other hand, those virtual elements can really enhance the gameplay, the ease of play, the experience you're having. there's sort of this fun back and forth of sound and visuals and things that you just can't get without embarrassing yourself playing a regular board game. So we take care. Yes, Jeremy does like to make the pew pew sounds, but I think that is really.
I'm the one who has the rule that when you're playing King of Tokyo, when your monster goes into Tokyo, you have to make your monster noise. It's required.
Absolutely. So I do think that the idea is to. I mean, I'm somebody who loves, like Rob was talking about, writing music for games that he's running and running RPGs. I mean, I love to have that sort of multimedia experience, and there's no reason why your board game can't have that too. And can't have all the bells and whistles that a great movie or a great video game has, and still be an in-person experience.
Exactly. In fact, worth noting that on our latest playtest, which I got to do in person recently with a very recent build, I hadn't experienced it for a while, and I decided, like, one of the things that we've mentioned is, like, our music, plays, your faction's music plays during your turn. And as we were going around the table, I was thinking to myself, man, this music is actually pretty obtrusive. Like I really like what I did, but I also decided that it needs to be a little bit, I was like, this is actually detracting from some of the experience, because it was just a little bit more, again, obtrusive, or dare I say, certainly on the UAF side, a little bit more bombastic than I would have hoped. So, I'm back to the drawing board now, and trying to hold on to the same themes and all the stuff, but just backing it down a little bit and maybe making it a little bit more ambient. So, so the other players aren't, just so it's not, because right now, it does kind of jump out at you a little bit more than I was thinking it would. And it's not just volume, it's just the quality of the music is a little bit more intensely related to the faction or whatever, but it's a little much. And so I'm back to the drawing board, and again that's what I'm working on, and all in aid of making this a personal experience that we all share together, instead of just the game like is taking over. Like the whole part of the thing is, you go play. We're not playing video games because we want to hang out with our friends, right? And we want to do a fun thing to hang out with our friends, but we don't want the fun thing to dominate the experience, right? And so that's that line, right?
Yeah, and I think that you bring up a good point, which is we're constantly refining things, trying to make them better and make them fit together in a way that creates a really unique experience. So I'm going to ask sort of the flip side of the other question I asked earlier, which is, like, what is we talked about the things that we love. So what is the thing that you most want fixed or improved in the next release of the game? Rob, I know the next iteration on the theme music is one of your things, clearly. But what else do you have on your list? What else would you like to see improved? And I'll tell you if Jeremy's already got it complete.
All right, well, no, skip me for now, because I need to think about that for a second.
All right, Jeremy, why don't I start with you? Because I know you know inside and out.
Yeah, talk to the guy who has the most work to do.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, the scamp in me says that I really want to get rid of all the placeholders, but that would just be mean. I would say the thing that I'm most looking forward to fixing, because being the lead developer, it's unfair to say, what's my least favorite thing, because whatever my least favorite thing is, I'm gonna fix it eventually, probably first. But I would say the thing that I am really looking forward to with the development team that we're contracting with is starting to play with the full Unity version of the app, the production quality app, running across Android and iOS. And one of the super cool things that shout out to our dev team. They did without direction because they just assumed, kind of going back to that Steve Jobs story that I had in the beginning. They have built and adopted full 3D object recognition into the Unity app. So it's feasible that when you decide to reach out and move one of your units, they'll just be able to track it. And one of my current frustrations with the current app is the amount of tapping that we need to do in order to execute a move. So I'm really looking forward to this idea of that you select, you want to do a move, you touch the piece, you move the piece, the app recognizes that the piece has moved, and you just say, finalize that. That'll be fun.
Right. Which turns out is not easy to do, folks, or we would have done it a long time ago.
Yeah.
But again, that's what we get for trying new things.
Well, I
How about
think
you, Keely?
Yeah, go ahead, Keely.
What was the question again?
What is your least favorite thing of the game, or what part of the game would you want to fix as your highest priority?
I think it is that in combination with integration of turn order, because I think the amount that you need to again tap around to get the ball rolling, especially if you're really thinking it through and you want to check out different pieces, you want to see like, all right, what's his, how much damage is he taking? Like, where can I secure some point of like forward movement in the game? Can I take two pieces here? Can I do this, that, or the other? Having that information readily on hand, so you don't have to do that to then speed up turn order, regardless of whether or not the game is, having multiple turns function at the same time, is a big one. Because it just any way we can minimize downtime and make it feel more like everything's happening at once without making it too overwhelming is, I think, fantastic.
Yeah, that's actually in the works. I'm working on a turn planner, so you should be able to go in and select your pieces, look at where you're going to move them, then look at what the attacks and do a full what if.
Yeah.
And then
Wow.
haven't decided yet whether you can just record that and then click a button and say execute it.
Mm-hmm.
But
that's an option. Amazing.
I hadn't considered
it. As that integrates with something that was mentioned earlier, where that plan changes as your opponent moves his pieces, that real-time action becomes very, very interesting and very volatile in a very good way.
There's a ton of fun things that we can do once you think about the fact that we have a shared software world where all of the pieces are being tracked, damage, effects, where they are. The sorts of things that you can do in a what if planning and turn planning become super cool.
Yeah, no, that's very, very exciting.
Yeah,
okay.
I totally agree.
Can I change my answer before I say it?
Sure.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. What I was going to say, and I think I'll stick with this because you've got my wheels turning, and that's super cool. And then there's a video game that does that, where you actually plan out your moves, and then you turn it on, and everything sort of happens together, and sort of the thing you were saying about like, oh well, if your opponent is no longer there, you miss or whatever. But doing that in kind of a what if scenario and then executing that is interesting. There's a couple games that have actually been built around that very concept. But what I was going to say, and I think this goes back to like the challenge of trying to do this new thing, is I want players who, especially if it's not your turn. Like I want to give as much information. I'm kind of a UI nerd for decades now. I would like for there to be as much information available at a glance. Remembering that we have like this tiny little, this is all the real estate we have. Even if but if you look through it, maybe you have more of sort of virtual real estate. But having enough information at a glance to make decisions, or to at least be strategizing, after you've, especially in a game with multiple players, where I'm looking at the game board and just looking at it without the aid of this device here, it's it's difficult to see, to remember what units are what, who's with the status of each unit, the status of each of your units, which unit of these 3 Space Rangers is the most damaged, or is about to do a thing, or I'm afraid is maybe about to do a thing that I'm worried about. Having as much information available to me at a glance or with minimal effort, so I can really have some true battlefield awareness available to me, right? I can kind of get a feel for how things are flowing, or at least in the upcoming turn, okay, I can be thinking about, okay, if this guy does this, I want to do this. But if I don't know the status of this guy, how can I make a decision about that? And we're still sort of working on that's a thing that we're still we're still tackling, with the limited real estate, how to present the user with enough information to make good tactical decisions, with only this much, show up, dang it. But with only this much real estate, well, it's not really but with such limited real estate, and using, incorporating convention, right? If I'm on a phone, here are the things that I'm used to seeing, right? Or if I'm in an application, right? A lot of work has been done around user interface, and how do we incorporate some of that, more interesting stuff to solve these very, very difficult problems.
Yeah, and information exposure is one of those things that all game developers struggle with, right? How much information do you share about the opponent? And even the games that you play with your own player card in front of you, there's often sort of game hints and rules of, well, you're collecting these elder signs in Cthulhu Wars. Keep them face down because you don't want your opponents to know how many elder signs you've picked up. Right. Or on the other hand, you look at a game like Dune and it says keep all of your resources open and on your player card, because everybody in the game should know how many resources you have at any given point. And one of the super fun things is that we can start to play with some of those dynamics in not necessarily real time, but in various updates, and also with various settings. And back to my favorite, inclusivity, we can do it on the device that is currently in somebody's hand, right? So, one of my frustrations is playing some of these larger board games where everybody has their player board in front of them. And it's really important to pay attention to what somebody is doing over there across the table. But if you don't see all that well, you can't see what's going on somebody else's card all the way across the table. But if you've got it all into a mobile phone app, you can just maybe swipe across and say, oh, what's going on in that other player's card that I'm supposed to know about? Right. How many tokens are they tracking, et cetera? And building a lot of that dynamic into Rift Zone Contact of, you can tap on an enemy unit and get a summary of, is it heavily damaged or severely damaged? But you don't get to know the exact hit points, or has it moved yet? Has it taken its action this turn? Or is all information that we get to play with?
That's great, right? Or even visually, oh, that thing's on fire.
Well, and that's actually in the latest version of the app that we were just playtesting. You can now sort of hold it up. It'll tell you which units have been destroyed, which units are, damaged. So Jeremy is adding some of those overlays, and then of course you want to think about how much information do you want to reveal and sort of what is too much overload. But I think it's one of those things that even more than I think sort of in the traditional games, although a lot of times you throw little chits on all the damaged units and stuff, and then you have to count through and figure it all out. We could show that dynamically, and we could literally show a unit is on fire, and that's pretty fun too.
I mean, there are things that are tried and true conventions of tabletop wargaming, and we have an analog for that, and if we can enhance that analog, digitally, yes, you saw what I did there, it just makes everything better. And like, I mean, this is me being a little pie in the sky, but I'm just sort of imagining like the RoboCop, right? Like he's like "Toot, toot, 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 toot," and all the or the Terminator, all this information is coming up about a thing, and yes, we have a limited space, but if I'm tap on a guy, like now I can explode the information.
Rob, you really need to just stop trying to show your phone.
Do this? What about what's that?
Yeah.
Hey, just go click on a live stream link somewhere.
Well, this visual problem with
yeah,
or
click
not
on the
problem,
wrong one.
but this solution rather for how to disseminate information in the game is a really, really interesting one, and I'm taking it as something that ties in pretty directly with the terrain. And as you see, like you see a unit, it gets damaged, it's on fire, it's got stings and scratches. You get a range for how much damage they've taken within the context of of course these species are generally going to know what the other unit does. But I like the idea quite a lot, and especially in conjunction with the later ability to modify your own pieces based on their experience. A unit is dealt damage, you know how much damage your weapons should generally do. So now the game can give you a ballpark. Let's say you've dealt damage, you've seen the unit, or your units have seen that unit. The game can now ballpark how much damage the unit's really taken, and if that doesn't line up with what the unit should have as far as general stat totals, now the game gives you a little more information as to what this unit's stats actually look like and how much of a threat it may pose, if it's something that is effectively like a veteran game piece. And I think that's really interesting, and how terrain cover changes that and how much information you get. That has the potential to add this kind of odd little information gathering sub game to the just basic aspect of shoot the guy and blow him up.
Right. That's interesting. There's a game that I played for a while called Darkest Dungeon, which a lot of people may or may not be familiar with. But one of the things that they started doing that I don't think they were doing when they first started, but I might be wrong about that because I'm a little ADD. But like when you mouse over your intended target, it does spit out like, okay, here's how much damage this attack is likely to do to it. And in this case, it gives you a lot of information, right? It's not tactical that way, like, but it will be like this unit has 8 hit points. Your attack is going to do 5 to 9. So, but it gives you enough, and we can give you enough information to again make a ballpark decision. Like maybe I'll get this guy, and maybe I won't. And is it worth it if I don't?
Rob, one of the things you were talking about earlier was sort of awareness of what's happening on the battlefield. And I think that's one of the things I do like about what we've built is that we have these beautiful map tiles that Keeley designed, and we have the miniatures. And so once you sort of have used the mobile app to sort of get a sense of things, you can also glance at the battlefield and sort of see what's going on. And
right.
It's, you're not caught in this virtual world. You actually, that's just a sort of like having the heads-up display as you were describing to look out at the scene that's going on, but you can still look out your window and see the opposing forces.
Exactly.
So I think that's something I really like about it. It's a real experience in addition to being an augmented one.
Yeah, that was one of the things that was really super important to you and I, Steve, right? Is that idea that you should be able to look at the physical board in the real world with the pieces on it and make a lot of your strategic decisions, especially once you've played a few times and you've got a kind of an idea of what the various units can do. You look at the board and you can play the game in your head on the board. And then when you need a little bit of extra information, you need to make that decision of, should I attack this Space Ranger over here or that Space Ranger over there? Remind me which one has taken damage, so that you don't have to be that human spreadsheet remembering, yes, I remember that 17 turns ago, that Space Ranger took 150 points of damage, but that one took 75. It's like, being inclusive again is using the phone partially as your memory for being able to look up the information that, had you been able to retain it at the point where it was given to you, you would have that advantage. So you kind of put it back to the strategic planning of it and not necessarily the memorization aspect.
Kind of levels the playing field. So like maybe someday I'll be able to beat Steve at one of these games.
Let's not get.
I can arrange that.
Yeah. Just talk.
A man
talk
can
to Jeremy.
dream, can't he? Yeah.
Just remember, up, down, left, right, A, B, start.
That's right. Use the cheat codes, Rob.
Right. I did just watch Wreck-It Ralph with my son, so.
Rob is modest. In every single first-person shooter, he would run circles around me. So.
Yes, but in every real-time strategy, the reverse is true. My Twitch stuff and my killer instinct. Steve's a much nicer person than me, which is not easy to do, but it's true.
It's not the case, but I bet you that in Riftstone Contact, we'll have to play again soon, and you can school me.
Yeah, I'm going to teach Bobby to play this weekend.
Awesome.
Film it.
Yeah, please. And do you want to tell people who Bobby is?
I can elucidate, sure. Yeah. So, so my son Bobby is magical and amazing and has special needs. And so, again, going back to like the kids loving this game, and being able to learn this game, I'm going to break it out and I will give you guys a full report on how that goes. But I anticipate that Bobby's going to pick this up.
Yeah.
And all the eye candy and all the visual stuff is going to make it even better. And we're going to play a bunch of Iron Maiden in the background. Oh, well, he's the poor kid is. I inflict my music on him regularly, and just as a child should when confronted with their parents' artistic endeavors, he's a little bit less enthusiastic than one might hope. But we'll see how it goes.
Let us know.
To do it.
When you can beat Bobby, then you and I should play again.
Good call.
So Keely, what's the next piece of art that we're going to get out of you over the next week here?
Next piece of art.
I trust you've been working on it this whole time, and you're about to ship it.
That's right.
Actually, I have had quite a few. So I've had those slightly like kind of mid-finished versions of a lot of the main units that we still need to get through. I have about 3 or 4 more of the like quick sketch passes on some of the attacks, and then from there we can start finishing those out. We still have that environmental piece for the the alien ruin also floating as well. I kind of have that sort of ley line theme building into that.
Mm-hmm.
And then there is a couple, or at least, there's a couple that I have sitting on the side, but the main one is the combat piece as well. With it was initially the Excalibur and the Stalker, and now it's one of the Rangers actually. And I think the composition got more interesting when I made that switch, so you could get the size comparison makes a little more sense. It's an exciting one. I have all the lines set out, and it's just once the more pressing things are off the docket, that'll come back in. That's an exciting one to think about. This is occurring to me, and maybe you guys have already talked about it and stuff. Again, we're not geographically close together, so I can't pass Keely in the hallway and go, "Hey, man!" But I know we're doing combat animations, right? We're doing attack animations, things like that, and maybe this is what you're getting at. But like, are we thinking about doing animations where a Space Ranger is attacking a Mauler? Right, like attacker defender. So currently, it's set up like because of the each thing has 3 or 4 attacks. The sheer quantity of combinations you need to be in. So we have a couple splash.
I don't have a problem with that because I'm not doing
it. If that was a humanly possible task, then yeah, it would be in there. But right now, it's having an attack graphic for each of the core units and a couple of their attack variants. And then a couple of good splash pieces of interesting character interactions on the battlefield.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's you bring up interesting point, Rob, which is that really there's all kinds of really fun things we can do. We can do, still artwork for some of the attacks. We can do animations for some of the attacks and the interactions. We can do animations on the battlefield through augmented reality and some of these things. So we've got all kinds of possibilities, and I think Keely's art is beautiful and is really dynamic. Right now, it really enhances the interactions, but I think different people are going to love different things, and as we sort of get further down this path, we'll give people options in terms of what do they want? Do they want animations? Do they want to see things in augmented reality? I think we're going to learn a lot, and we're going to listen to our customers and to the people who play the game, and really go after those features. But I mean,
Kickstarter backers,
and especially
mostly those folks.
Yeah,
it's actually
mostly you.
Rob, your idea is actually interesting because on paper, we can't have an illustration for every clash across every character. It's like a deck of cards. We'd be drawing a universe at this point. But what we could do is have as I'm working on these sort of core attack PNG illustrations for each unit,
right?
Having those set up so they can function if you split the screen diagonally in half, and every time one thing fights another thing, you have the option to put on this sort of clash image of we have someone do like an animated split down the
that's very
let's say
anime.
You're like Scryox Reaper versus
oh, that's good.
Yeah,
right. Or at least right. Fight.
And they clash, and then damage goes off. Units take their damage, etc. But now you just need one flippable illustration for top side, bottom side of each of the characters, and then that becomes very, very feasible. And I think that's one of those things that's very visually engaging. That also looks very good with the UI and doesn't slow down the combat itself. That can be like a 1 second done,
and does show the scale, right?
Yes.
Sure.
Yeah,
which I think physically we can see, but any way we can dramatize that more, right, is a positive thing.
Yeah, I think you could also do like the attack of one unit in the foreground, and then the attacking unit or the opposing unit in the background, and then you could have them scaled appropriately, and so you sort of have a snapshot of the scene by just sort of overlaying the two images. So maybe we can play with some of those things.
And then the map tile as well in the back. If we have like a dedicated backdrop per terrain, so then we have maybe 5 of those. And then I think this functions best that when your phone is horizontal, you sit there. There's your backdrop. Boom, boom. Unit clash damage. I think get in there. Again,
this is how we work, you guys. We're just popping.
Yeah.
Jeremy will have it done by tomorrow.
Awesome.
Yeah, this is all in silence, though. I don't think we need sound for this at all.
For sure.
Right.
What if we had sound?
We already have most of the attack sounds, right?
It's true. Yeah, good. You're right, man. So we don't need anything else. You got, as long as I don't have to.
I think that the fun part is just there's all kinds of possibilities, and I can certainly think of people who want to have different kinds of sounds, different kinds of music, and some more personalization. To me, is also a really exciting direction. Because I want my army to be unique, and whether I'm painting my own miniatures or picking my own music or picking a particular set of sound effects that I think are the most dynamic, I like that idea, especially if 8 people around the table playing. Every one of them could have a pretty unique experience and neat possibilities.
I do have to say, though, for the attack stuff, I'm kind of enjoying the UEDF attack graphic coming in from one side and swooping across the screen while it's playing the sound effect, and then the counterattack comes in and you get the Scryox coming in from the other direction with that sound effect, and then you get the attack results. So I'm liking that current dynamic, and enhancing that I think is a lot of fun if they're both coming in across the top and then put the slash and then give the attack results. That'll be
1980s anime style is pretty cool.
Yeah,
I'm
absolutely.
all about the 1980s anime style.
Because this also keeps that initial concept, but also makes it more visually interesting and streamlined. And then you have it mirrored. So if you're on, let's say, the Scryox side, the Scryox comes in from, like the right dominant side or whatever, whereas, UEDF can come from the left and flip-flop it, depending on whose unit's attacking and who's defending.
Yep.
Right. All right. So we got about 20 minutes left. We will hopefully have some more people who are excited about what we're doing and excited about the possibility. Pledge to the Kickstarter. But I will say it's been really fun and rewarding to work on this so far. I look forward to every week. Definitely look forward to working with this group of people, but also we have an extended team. Kevin Batchelor was working on some of the software with us and participated in Gen Con a couple of years ago. Jonathan Grayson, my brother-in-law, did a lot of server work and helped us with a unit editor back in the early days of the project. Jeremy's son Joshua wrote the first lines of code on the project and actually has helped out over the last summer as well on some of the server side things. So it's been we've got some other artists who've helped out and participated. We have Thargan, who's our 3D modeler, who helped do all the 3D modeling for the various miniatures, which has been fantastic. And for some of the augmented reality terrain pieces, which really has enhanced the game. So there is a larger team behind us that's been contributing and making this whole thing come together. And look forward to, as we expand the team and build more out of the game to sort of grow our boosted reality family and take on more ambitious parts of the project. Did I leave anybody off? I'm sure.
Roll credits.
Oh, I should mention my wife, Sheila, who is our CFO and is helping to keep us solvent through all of this, and also has been doing play testing and helping to drive things forward. We've had it's been my son Dashel who helped do some of the initial game design with me, sort of the first pencil and paper prototypes with dice that we put together and played before we got started on the application. So it truly has been a family and friend effort. Our friends Brian and Rod, who have been willing to play test and go through the early days when the app would crash or when we get halfway through a game and have to stop to debug things.
That happened once.
And 3D print all of our prototypes.
That's right, and have kindly helped 3D print the hordes that now litter my entire office, and Jeremy's, and so it's been a great team effort, and definitely looking forward to continuing the journey.
Did you guys want to talk at all? And forgive, I don't want to cut you off, but did you guys want to talk at all about the apocalypse? Yeah,
it's a great idea, Rob. I mean,
the
I think
apocalypse I'm planning.
Yeah. No. Settle down, Bond villain. I mean, I think it's actually a really good point, Rob, which is that we know that there have been some other app-driven games in the past that have had some success to begin with, but then for whatever reason, the creators weren't able to continue them, and so that the games really weren't playable any longer. And that's something that Jeremy and I are very sensitive to because, Jeremy has a whole bookshelf full of games behind him, and I know he'd be disappointed if some of them weren't playable anymore. I have plenty of computer games I've bought that aren't playable anymore for various reasons. And I think that the thing that we want to be sure is that we're being responsible as we develop the platform and the software and make sure that has longevity past, any events that might happen, and that the physical game itself has value past the software. So, Jeremy, maybe you can speak a little bit.
Right?
Yeah. And Jeremy, maybe you can speak a little bit to the kind of things we're thinking about on the software side to ensure that we have the longevity that people expect.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that should be clear, at least I hope it's clear to anybody who's watching this stream and the previous streams, is exactly how passionate we are about the game and the community, and making sure that we're listening to everybody as well as opening things up to everybody. And so one of the models that we really want to embrace is making sure that the community can continue to be involved no matter what happens, whether that's from starting to help us make additions to the game. So we hint a lot about what might come through the Rift next. I've said a couple of times, what might come through the Rift is something that you bring through the Rift. And we are talking about allowing people to add their own units, stick an RFID tag on one of your existing toys, and maybe bring that through the Rift. And that community contribution will continue. And in the apocalypse scenarios, since we are so passionate about our game and passionate about people playing it and enjoying it and being included, in the event that we're not able to continue to support the software, we've built on pretty solid platform foundations with Apple's iOS and Google's Android. And so it will be possible for the community to pick up the source code and continue moving that forward if we're not able to do it. And then, I think the final solution, the true apocalypse, if nobody has mobile apps anymore, is we do have the original rule set that Steve and Dashiell came up with, that is cards and dice and a simple set of rules. So it's definitely not the part of the plan that we want to talk about, but anybody who has been in the technology industry for a while always has a plan for how you're going to keep your players, keep the community going, even if we're not able to continue to push it forward ourselves. But I have this feeling that no matter what happens, I'm going to continue to be working on this code and continuing to make additions.
Yeah, and I actually would say that our the post-apocalypse version of the game is fun to play, and it's a different experience, but it's a fun experience. And
I didn't mean to imply something so dire as the stuff. I was more like, okay, but what if no one has a phone and you have all this stuff? Like we have rules available to play the game absent of technology.
It's a question that we get, and it's a question that we always want to honestly answer. Is like Steve said, there's been games before us that have said, oh, we're going to add technology to the game, and the mistake, I'll call it a mistake. The mistake that they've made is in requiring custom hardware, or not having full ownership of the source code that equips the app, and not necessarily being able to have these plans for continuing the growth of it. But since we picked, and very consciously picked, this should run on almost any modern smartphone. Smartphones are only going to get better. And as long as Apple is still shipping iOS and Google is still shipping Android, we're still going to be able to enhance this platform, which is pretty much key for me.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that we're excited about is Redstone Contact is the first chapter of a many chapter game and story. And the ideas we have, I'm so excited about getting to the next chapter and the next chapter and the chapter after that. And I think that's where we just see all kinds of great possibilities. And we also see that there's really neat things we can do with the technology too. So there's lots of kinds of games and lots of other game experiences we could create using this approach. So we're definitely see a bright future, and we really are hoping to have people join us on this journey. All right. Any last thoughts, guys? We've got 10 minutes left.
Yeah, honestly, I was like,
thanks, Trem.
All right.
Oh, I missed that.
You're
I was
good. Go
thinking,
ahead, Rob.
oh, it's so funny because I was like, when I heard we were doing this, I said, Steve, that's a really long. Well, we're never. In my mind, I'm like, there's no way on God's green earth we're gonna fill this space, and I feel like, fortunately or unfortunately, we could probably keep on going.
We're all pretty good at talking.
Yeah,
we're all excited about what we're doing for sure. And actually, I it's funny. We had we meet, on a regular basis talking about various aspects of the game or the business or what we're trying to do. And I love that last time we started talking about game enhancements and the lore, and suddenly our 1 hour meeting seemed way too short, and we have to carve out time just to sit and brainstorm and plan for the future. And so I think that's one of the things that I'm really excited about, is that there's so many people who are everybody involved in the project is excited, and our kind of core group of contributors, we as you can probably tell, we interrupt each other. We're so excited about the ideas that pop to mind about what can happen next and what we should be working on next and where this could possibly go. So that's fun to me. So I definitely appreciate everybody. Appreciate you guys. Appreciate everybody who's contributed to the Kickstarter. Encourage anybody who hasn't to join in and to pledge. Great things coming, and definitely looking forward to what comes next.
Last chance to pledge and watch us all do the happy dance again.
I'm not sure that's...
that may be a disincentive, but...
Okay, well, I'll also say you could wait 10 minutes and we'll end the stream, and then you can pledge and you don't have to watch the happy dance.
Right.
That's right. Any last words, guys, before we get ready to sign off here?
Well, I gotta say, I've gotten a lot of really, really great ideas out of this conversation for art to come, as well as different unit ideas. There's a lot of things just that can naturally flow out of conversations like this that make it really intuitive and exciting to build on an existing world.
We should do a 3-hour live stream every week. That's a great idea.
Well, I mean, no, but I will say that we haven't had enough of these very long form meetings where we're just geeking out.
Mm-hmm.
And, a lot of our meetings, a little peek behind the curtain, are a little bit more. We're all business. We're like, okay, what are we doing now and stuff, and a little bit less of us getting a chance to just really spitball, and we could certainly be doing more of that, and I would love to have the opportunity to do so.
Maybe we'll move all this to Discord at some point and let the community contribute that way. We'll do these long form meetings on Discord or one of the other more social apps.
Or harpsichord.
Great suggestion, because I do think that every time we talk to people who play the game or who have interest in it, we get great new ideas. And as brilliant as we are, we have a really great community of people who are passionate about it, and they've helped us a lot.
Right.
So keep those ideas coming. Those of you who are on the Discord and involved in the Kickstarter, we really appreciate it.
I do want to touch on one more thing. Go ahead, Jeremy.
And those of you that are not on the Discord, scroll back in the chat. I posted our link tree, and there's a Discord invitation on the link tree. So just tap through all of that, and while you're at it, like, follow, and subscribe on Facebook and Instagram and TikTok.
Yeah, what I was going to say is we've sort of alluded to this, but I want to make a point of saying that, correct me if I'm wrong here, but every kid who's played this game has been absolutely bonkers about it. Am I wrong?
Yeah.
No,
you are not wrong.
Yeah, so I mean, even if it's not your thing, like, what's the line from Back to the Future? Like, that's maybe a little or too early for you, but your kids are going to love it, right? I mean, like, really, it's sort of, it's pretty crazy, like, and something that I guess I keep bringing up because I hadn't considered it, but like this really captures the imagination of someone who hasn't had their perceptions sanded down by, 20, 30, 40 plus years of life, and who are still seeing like the magic in things. And I think the kids really like dig this.
Yeah, I mean, when we started developing it, we really had in mind developing a game that would appeal to people who love war games and who like sort of classic science fiction and who like sort of the big sweeping story arcs, but like the sort of the Warhammers and there's sort of tactical D&D like games, and
it's really crunchy stuff. But
crunchy stuff, and
it hadn't occurred to me that like.
I mean, that was a big part of it. Was we'd love to play a 6-hour game of Gloomhaven, but we have an hour. So what are we going to do? And we have 6 friends over, and this game says it's good for 4. So what are we going to do? So we're trying to solve real problems for ourselves. But I think you're right, Rob, that even though that was sort of our initial target audience, what we've found is that sort of trying to create just a great, fun experience has resulted in something that has much broader appeal.
Yeah, the simplicity of it, right, is like,
yeah.
I click a thing, and like it's easy.
Yeah,
and
kids usually get it faster than us adults, so that's the only humbling part.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I'd say anybody who grew up with a smartphone instantly gets a lot of the pieces of it. The number of folks that have come through the play tests, and we do a survey at the end of every play test, and the number of folks that have said, I didn't think this was my sort of game, but I loved it. Or I've been thinking about getting into war games, but I was intimidated, and this is awesome. I think somebody called us the bacon of wargaming as the gateway.
Wow.
I like that. I like being compared to bacon.
Yeah. This really does feel like a gateway game in a lot of ways.
Yep. Yeah. I've said that as well. Yeah, the gateway game for wargaming. But I think actually that the big takeaway for me is we just are trying to make a game that anyone can enjoy, and whether you really like hardcore tactics and are trying to eke out every last bit of performance of your army, or you just want to sit down for a casual game and have fun and enjoy the special effects, we want to make something that can work for everybody.
2 minutes, guys.
Well, any last words, guys? Sign off. I guess. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for everybody who's listened. Thanks for the folks who've contributed to the chat. Thank you, REM Alternatives, for giving us this venue to share some of our passion about Ripzone Contact and what we're building. Really appreciate it.
Definitely. Thanks to everybody who has already backed us. Your contributions will make the difference. And anybody who is either watching the recording or anybody who is still on the fence, there's 8 hours left in the Kickstarter. And we're looking forward to producing the game and shipping it to all of our backers.
The end.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, y'all.